Well, hi everyone. Welcome to the New England Racing Show, Manchester, New Hampshire, Channel 23. We're also on YouTube, and like us on Facebook. You'll get the show automatically on your Facebook page every week. Well, we've been saving this tape here for a few weeks. It's a presentation done by Irish Saunders of the Hoosier Tire Corporation. And they supply tires to a lot of the midgets, modifieds, super modifieds, all over the country. And he came to the meeting of the Northeast Midget Association and talked to us for over an hour. So we're going to break this up into three parts. And we're going to do part one today. And it's everything you need to know about Hoosier tires and tires in general, not just Hoosiers, but how they work and how they'll work on your car, and some tricks to do to make them last longer, and how they cycle out. So here we are at the Neiman meeting, and this is Irish.
Many of you watch, everybody watch like the Continental, the series, the Rolex series, 24 Hours Daytona. We produce all the tires for Continental. Those are actually Hoosier tires that are run for the 24 Hours Daytona. The Trans Am series in road racing. So we do that too, but we do make over 2,000 different types of tires. And again, personally myself, I'm very passionate about midget racing. I love midget racing. I always have. I've met a lot of great people in midget racing. We were talking about the other day, the first time, I think Rich Vogler, which I think everybody knows Rich Vogler. Rich was one of our first guys to get on Hoosiers. And we were at Raceway Park, and Bobby Seymour comes over to me and says, you need to meet these people from the Northeast. And it was Mike Scrivani and his dad, and Noki. And Mike's dad was yelling at Noki, and I'll never forget that. You know, he wanted to change the car before he even got on the track, I think, didn't he, or something like that. But you know, you meet a lot of great people. The Kevin Olsons, the Sleepy Trips. You know, those are all midget drivers. Kenny Schraders. And they were all characters. You know, they always had, there was characters in racing. And that's things that you always remember. But with the tires, just to let you know, again, you know, we have over 500 employees that work at Hoosier Racing Tire. Everything is in-house. We manufacture everything in-house. We have our own analytical lab that we do all the rubber in-house. We have our own coloring facility, so we calendar our own fabric. And there's different types of fabric for different types of racing. We custom make a little bit of everything for any type of car that might be out there. So example, if you, all of a sudden you said, hey, you know what, we're going to change the rules here, and the cars are going to weigh whatever it might be. If it's more, and we look at it and say, hey, you know what, maybe we need to make a tire change here, and we have to adjust the tire to the cars. You know, we look at what tires worked back, we'll say 20 years ago, doesn't necessarily mean it's the same tire that we're going to run today, that we're running today. So we have to try to make that tire that is built today, and a tire that's made 6 months down the road, is going to be the same for consistency. So you have that same consistency through the whole thing. When we manufacture the rubber and we mix it in a Banbury, how many of you, when you're up here with Marvin, when Marvin did anybody get a chance to go through like his Banbury and see his plant? Did you ever, Russ, when you was up here? So you got a chance to kind of see what it is. It's quite the process. The best way that I describe making a compound is like baking a cake. You know, you just have so many different ingredients that you put in. You know, you put in flour, you put in some milk, you put in some, you know, I mean, it's just different ingredients that you do that. And a lot of it that we had to do back in the day was a lot of trial and error. We have a full analytical lab, and every batch of rubber that's produced, say if it's your MG7 compound that you run in your right rear, before that rubber is released out into the plant, it goes through a spot check through all of our, we have certain guidelines that it has to fit within, and certain parameters that it has to fit within. So basically that compound is shipped over, and it's pretty simple. It's in a tube like you would for a mail or a bank, rather, where you put in there and it runs through the tube. Let's go over to the analytical lab, and then they run it through all the process that they have to, and then once that's okayed and it's within the tolerance, then that rubber went ahead and released. So there are a lot, well, I shouldn't say a lot of times, but we do scrap out rubber that doesn't fit the guidelines because there might be an outside vendor that sends a chemical in and says, oh yeah, this chemical is what it is, and we check that chemical, and sure enough, it doesn't meet our tolerance. And we're known as being very, very picky about what we take. A lot of that stuff that we make gets shipped off into making mud flaps for trucks or whatever it might be. But anyhow, our plant runs 24/7. So we do everything in-house, from mixing the rubber with the nylon. There's different types of cord that you can use. The best way I say for cord is you've got different types of cord where you have a cord that's, let's say that you have so many ends per inch of cord, and then you can have more, so you have more cord and not as much rubber, or you can have less cord with more rubber that makes the tire feel flexible. More flexible is what it is. Now, as we go here, I want you to ask questions, because what I always find out is, and I've always had people ask questions, because if you wait until the end, they forget about those questions. So anytime here, I want you guys to raise your hand, or girls, anybody, just if you have any questions about something, let us know. Let me know. So you have different types of cord that you can use. Most of these tires that we build are 2-ply tires because of the weight of the cars. Midgets are lightweight cars. We also have different constructions on the front. The front tires are different than what the rears would be. Remember one thing with the midget tires, for 1 pound of air is going to equal about 15 pounds of spring rate in the car. So that's something that you need to remember. And use that tire as a spring also. Doing some testing that we did some midget pavement testing probably, I want to say a couple of years ago, because we had to do some chemical change, because everything's going green. Some of the other manufacturers have not gone green yet with their compounds and with their tires, but it's going to happen. So we wanted to get ahead of the curve. So we did a lot of stuff down the road in the past here that we wanted to make sure the tires were green, and we were ahead of the ball game before it had to actually happen. The government comes in and says, you will make tires that's going to be green. So, yes?
Back on that, 1 pound equals 15 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
What's the rate that you like to see it started at?
Well,
And what is the optimum race pounds
tire
that you
pressure,
cut back on?
tire pressure, and then go from there.
Yep.
Depending on the track, okay? I mean, obviously, if you're going to run a track that's going to be like a Star Speedway versus Thompson, I'd always start, and of course, are you running bleeders here with me?
No.
No bleeders. I would start off the right rear is probably right at like 14 pounds on the right rear. I'd probably start out at 16 pounds on the right front. Anywhere no lower than 8 on the left rear. And then on the left front, usually depending on the spring again.
Excuse me, what was that left rear?
8. No lower than 8. No lower than 8 on the left rear. And then on the left front, here's the thing that you think about. As a driver, you can maybe relate to this. How many times have you went out, you drive the car, and you have that annoying, it's just tight into the middle. You ever have that? Just tight into the middle. Well, remember one thing, the more air pressure you run in a tire, the more cornering force a tire wants to make. So in other words, that tire wants to turn left. So think about this. Let's say that I'm going to use a big number just to give you an idea. Let's say we have 20 pounds in the right front, and we have 10 pounds in the left front. All right? So the lower the air pressure, the straighter a tire wants to go. The higher the air pressure, the more a tire wants to corner. So when you go off into the corner, and the right front's turning left, the left front's going straight, it puts toe in into the car. What's toe in make your car do? Makes you tight. So, the perfect world is, because of the front tires have the same construction, they need to work the same. They need to have the same characteristics. So the closer you can get to running the same air pressure on tires, whether it be front or rears, the better off you're going to be. How many of you have, let's say, I'm going to try to pick a track here, let Thompson, because Thompson's got long straightaways, that you have a set of tires you put on, and you feel like going down a straightaway, not so much under speed, but fairly so, it feels like the right rear and the left rear are fighting each other. You ever have that feeling like they're just not compatible? And then you put another set of tires on, it's like, man, this is a real smooth ride. And what we found in testing, no matter if it's a modified, or if it's a sprint car, or a midget, or a late model, the closer you get to those air pressures getting together and working together, the smoother it makes the car run. We've also found that if we were in open competition racing, the stiffest construction on the car to make a car turn, would anybody guess what it would be?
Tire.
Which one?
The tire?
Yeah, what construction, what corner of the car would the stiffest construction be?
It would be your right front.
Anybody else want to guess?
I'd say right rear.
Right rear? Anybody else?
left rear, you're driving off the left, right?
The left rear. The stiffer that you make the left rear, the more cornering force you can put in the left rear, the better it makes the car turn. And here's what's happening, a real quick story I can tell you with a modified, and it works on all cars, because they all have four wheels and they all want to do the same thing. We were in Richmond, Virginia with Tony Hirschman driving Lenny Bowler's car. And the engineers and I were there, and we're trying to get the car to rotate. It just would not rotate. And with those cars, you run restrictor plates, so it's very important to carry your corner speed to keep the cars up with corner speed. And all Tony's complaining about is, I'm tight, I'm tight, I'm tight. The car won't turn, the car won't turn. So at that point in time, we were running a real stiff construction on the left front. I got Lenny Bowler off the side. I said, you know what, it's really pissing me off right now. I said, so I'm going to show you what a tight car is. So I took that left front construction, I put it on the left rear, and we picked up 3/4 of a second. It's like all of a sudden, it's like, man, this is unbelievable. But when you think about it, that left side tires have got to run a shorter radius. They've got to. So they need more cornering force. So a lot of times, you're better off to overstagger the tire with chalk size and be able to run more air pressure in the left rear. It'll definitely make your car turn better. Which brings up the chalk size. Does anybody know how those chalk sizes get put on there?
So what was your suggestion? You didn't leave you left the left front out. You want that left front to be the same pressure as you can.
As close to the right.
Close to the right. And even though you want your tire pressure to be somewhat equal, you're going to still run half the pressure on the left rear.
Yeah, the left rear now.
Than the right. Okay.
Yep. So, but the more air pressure you can run in the left rear and still maintain your stagger, the better the car's going to rotate in the middle of the corner.
Okay, so if you're running 14, 15 pounds in your right rear and it's coming up to 21, 22 pounds, I found it not to be good.
Yeah, well, here's something that'll happen too. Did you think about this? And even so much, even on the right rear or the left rear, the more that those tires get that buildup, because how many times have you went out in the car and you say, boy, the longer I run, the tighter I get. It just keeps getting tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter.
So that's what you're doing, is you're anticipating that air pressure growing, right?
The air pressure build up. But what's happened here is your air pressure is building up on the right front, and that it's throwing your balance off between your right front and your left front. So you're still getting that more cornering force, and the more that the right front's building up, the left front can't keep up with it. I mean, there's been many times when we were tour racing that we would start the left front off with more air pressure than the right front. Almost as much as 4 to 5 pounds in the left front than the right front on tour race. We'd start off with 19 pounds in the left front and 15 pounds in the right front. And that's why the cars were still turning, we were still turning at the end of the race. So you have to try to keep that balance. You want to try to keep that balance there and make the tires work the same. And it's almost to the point where, you know, you might have a situation where you might have to even start off, depending on the track, maybe a couple pounds lower on the right rear just to start off. But there should, you know, I mean, you look at it, I mean, a lot of things happen when you're running air pressure, and you ever have that situation where the tire starts off, it's really good when it's cold, and then it kind of falls into what I call a funk. It doesn't feel real solid, and doesn't feel real positive. And then the longer you run, the better it starts coming around a little bit better. The car starts feeling better. But what's happening is the tire's distorting. You have your fabric, which has coat stock on it, which is rubber that's on the fabric, that's cold. You have your compound that's cold, so it's holding a good contact patch on the ground. Well, as that starts to build heat and flex, it starts distorting. And when it starts distorting, you don't have a good solid contact patch on the car. But as your air pressure starts building up, the contact patch lays back down on the car. And if you can actually see it, which we have some plating at the track or at the plant where you can see that when they put a load on that, you can actually see how much that tire distorts. And you look at, say, your midget tire, that 12-inch wide tire, you might only have a matter of maybe 8 inches that's on the ground with real low air pressure. And as you just pick up your air pressure a little bit, it puts more of a footprint down, the contact patch down. We've also found that running lower air pressure creates more flex. More flex creates more heat. More heat is more air pressure buildup. So sometimes you can run more air pressure and not get as much buildup because it's not doing as much flex. Not so much on midgets tires because the compounds are softer. But have you ever listened to a street stock, for example, and the car's going out there and you can hear the tires squealing through the corners? Or maybe you can even hear a right front, maybe it's squealing through the corners. When that tire's squealing, that means that it's distorting, so it's underinflating. And and all he would have to do is pick up some air pressure on that, a couple, 2-3 pounds, and that squealing would probably go away. So if you ever hear that, you know exactly what's going on.
Prior, you were just going to start making a statement about pre-sizing and chalk. I think personally, well, some guys get it through experience, but I think what you're leading up to, I think we probably abuse your tires by things we do. You know, the mounting and the storing of tires, new and used, we probably heard. There's some guys that keep tires mounted in the trailer all summer long in 120-degree weather.
Yeah.
Some put them in the cool garage. I used to mount my tires 4 or 5 days ahead of the race. I tried to pre-size them and I leave them that way, and I left them in the cool garage. Never tried to keep them out in the heat and everything else.
Right.
And we always had our problems, but I think, you know, is it good to have them 4 or 5 days mounted?
You know, here's the thing.
And go by the, you know,
the
talk
chalk
about the
size?
pre-size.
Yeah, I can tell you exactly where this chalk size comes in at.
Yeah.
Is what it is when the tire comes out, it's a clamshell mold is what it comes out of. When it comes out of the mold, it's at roughly 350 degrees. That's put on a machine. It's called a post inflator, which is aired up to 35 pounds. That is at 350 degrees. That tire is measured. Regular guy takes a tape measure, puts it around there, measure it. Yep, it's 75 and a half, or it's 75 inches, or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And that tire, that's wrote on that tire.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of you are probably saying, okay, I got to set 2 75 and a halves. One of them's coming out at 73 and a half, the other one's coming out at 74. And what will happen there is it's an age thing that happens. The older a tire is, the shorter a tire will come up. You could build a tire today versus a tire that was built 4 months ago. And the 4-month-old tire is going to come out a little bit shorter than what the one is fresher. So that does happen. But it's always good. My recommendation is when you mount tires up, air them up to 35 pounds, because that's where you know that they were set at. So air them up to 35 pounds. Don't try to get to that 75 inch or whatever it's not going to be, but just air them up to 35 pounds. Leave them set for, 5 minutes or whatever, then let them down to whatever air pressure you're going to start at, and just work it from there. And remember, as everybody probably knows, with 2 pounds of air is going to be a 1/4 inch is what you're going to gain or lose in stagger. The other thing that's a bad thing that I've seen people do. How many of you ever had tires shrink? Had tires shrink.
We all do.
Yep. And you're like, why does it happen?
Or it doesn't grow at all.
Or it doesn't grow. I can't understand it. It's like going to a slot machine and pulling levers.
Yeah.
Anytime that you have natural rubber, you have nylon, you have a tendency that could happen. And here's what happens that I see more than not, is when you change air pressure, they do it when the tire's hot. Like when you just come in, as soon as hot laps come over, the first thing you want to do is jack the car up. Let's check the stagger. Oh, we got 1/2 inch too much. Let's let 4 pounds out of the right rear. Or put some air in the left rear, whatever you want to do. Well, by doing that, think about this. What's the first thing that happens when you take a match and put on a piece of nylon rope? What's it do?
Melts.
It melts, it shrinks, okay? So, by doing that, let's say that you have 18 pounds of air in the right rear, but you only started off with 14. So there's only that volume of 14 pounds in there. It did build up air pressure, but the volume's still the same. So, what you've done now is letting the air out of the tire. When it's hot, the tire's going to shrink. You're going to have some shrink. The tire could have a tendency to shrink. And one thing about rubber too is it does have a memory. How many of you have went out in a hot lap session? Let's say that it's a 90-degree ambient temperature. Track temperature is 115 degrees. You put a new set of tires on. You go out. The car's really good. You say, boy, that's my feature tires. I'm going to set them things off to the side. And we're going to run those tonight. They're going to be good. I'll put another used set of tires on, or if you're financially well enough that you can put another set of tires on, you put them on, you run in the heat race. You come back in the feature, you put those tires back on. The ambient temperatures now went from 90 degrees to 70 degrees. The track temperatures went from 110, 115 degrees down to 85 degrees or 90 degrees. You put the tires on, you go to take off, and the car just will not get a hold of the racetrack. Ever had that happen before? And here's what happens. That rubber's got a memory. It knows that the last time it was out there, it was 230 degrees, we'll say. The tire needs to get back up to that 230 degrees. Everybody talks about what's the best way to break in tires. My theory is on breaking in tires is only bring them up to temperature really slow, enough just to take the scuff off of them. Now, with NEMA, you guys qualify through heats, right? Because you don't do qualifying, or just everything's all through heats, right? Okay, because I was gonna say, the best thing that I've ever found for qualifying, if you ever do a qualifying situation, is to take a light scuff on 3 corners and sticker the right rear. Because it is fast. I mean, that's always been fast to do that. No matter what type of car it's been on, we've always done that and it's been fast. Because usually that first lap, you throw it away because the right front's not coming in. So you have a chance to do that. But remember that it's got a memory. So if you're going to go out and size your tires before your feature, it's always good to just bring them up, just kind of take the glaze off of them, just take the scuff off of them, and then go from there. A couple things that people have done, and I don't know, and I was talking to Mike earlier about the rules, because I'm all about saving guys money. I'm a racer. I got boys that race, so I know what it costs to race also. And you know, with your tire rule that you have, that's great that everybody's on the same thing. You know, we talked about that MG5 compound for a right front. That thing is so good that the car just turns, and I mean, the rear's got to go with it. So you might have a tendency of beating up a right rear because your nose is just so good. And it kind of takes that balance back out that we talked about. But what I've found also, a lot of things, does anybody flip their tires on the rims anymore? You do? You know, that's something that we used to do more in the supers, and when Brian Allegresso was with Bentley, we did it a lot. And he'd go out in a heat race, he'd run the tires one way, and then he'd go ahead and flip them around. Well, that being done, if you look at it, you know, the tire always comes out of its deflection on the back shoulder of the tire. So you have not as much rubber on the back shoulder, but when you turn around, you've got all that good rubber that's on the outside shoulder, it's now on the back shoulder. So that will give you that little bit more. But I don't know what ever happened, why guys got away from it. Did you ever used to do that, Russ? Never turn them around?
The rotation.
The rotation is very important the first time.
Okay.
The first time you run, it's very important, and it's always, yes.
On the left rears, we have directional arrows on the tires that were there. I don't flip them, I flip the other 3 tires.
Okay.
Can we flip the left rear with the direction arrow?
You can. Here's what I'm going to tell you. I was getting ready to tell you. The date code that's down by the bead, it's got 4 digits on it. Always remember, when they're a sticker, always run those to the infield. They always need to be on the infield. So you won't be able to see it on the right rear, but you'll be able to see it on the left rear. So you'll never be able to see it on the right rear, but the left rear. So always run those towards the infield after you run them the first time. And the reason that we do that is because those tires, except for the fronts, the rear tires, are put on with an Orbitread machine. And what an Orbitread machine does is it's strip wound. The front tires are put on with 1-piece treads, okay? But the rears are. And sometimes, you ever see the lamination marks that go around the tire? Well, what it does is when it's laid over the top of it, when you do it that way, it's not going against the grain. But once you run the tire one time and get a good heat cycle through it and run it, then you're able to flip that tire around. And you can do lefters too, and fronts if you want to.
I always ran the dates on the infield all the time.
Yep, that's the right way to do it. Something else that we found that works, a lot of the dirt people do it. A lot of asphalt people that I know have done it and still do it, is how many buff tires? Anybody take their used tires home and buff them and bring them back and run them?
We don't. We can't seem to get a second race out of the tires. Not to knock you down, but we have a 3-tire rule, and sometimes we need 8 tires to get through the weekend.
Yeah, and you know, I mean, and that's something too that I wanted to
We
address
glitch from easy.
Yeah.
From easy sometimes.
Yeah, and that's something that, you know, Mike,
Especially right rear.
we talked about, you know, by having that softer tire on the right front,
Yeah.
it makes it so good, and you put so much, you know, and here again, you know, the cars keep getting faster. I mean, does the lights cars have as much trouble as what the regular midgets do? They're not, but
Depends how you set it up.
what's that?
Some of the cars are set up awful that it just burns some tires right off of it, but then they'll set it up great the next night and the tires will be awesome.
Yeah. And you're right. I mean, there's some of it is that it's on setup. I mean, I'm not going to be the first one to say, you know, you got to fix your car, because I'm not that type of guy.
We do 2 practices, a heat and a feature, and you couldn't run that right rear tire through everything. I've never found it. You know?
Yes, Steve.
When we do warm-ups, the last round of warm-ups, we usually call it, for lack of better words, the heat setting tires. And we do 10 laps with warm-ups. Is there a better way? Because it seems like I work harder in warm-ups sometimes than I do in a regular feature. Some will go 3 or 4 laps and drop down, and then wait for the 2 laps to go, and then come up and then fire up again. Is there a better way, or is this really helping? I'm sure it is because everybody does it, but just out of curiosity, the 3 hot laps drop down, driver on the bottom, 2 laps ago, everybody pops back up, and it ends our warm-up session.
Everybody, Steve, has their own way that they want to do it. Again, personally myself, I think if you just gave everybody 5 laps, that's all you got, and you just get it done, that's it, you know? I mean, is it going to affect it? As long as everybody's doing the same thing, it doesn't matter. So enough just to go out there and take the shine off the tires is what you want to try to do. So I know I've seen it too. I mean, some guys go out there and they run 2 or 3 laps, and then they drop down and they go slow, and then they come back and they hammer down for 2 more laps to see where they're at, you know. And I see more of that with different types of cars that have qualifying, that they do qualifying, you know, they just take the shine off, then they'll go out there and they'll hammer off 2 qualifying laps, what they'll try to do, you know. So, I mean, personally myself, I think 10 laps is a lot of laps myself. But getting back to your question on the tire, I mean, we can do whatever a series wants to do for tire. We can build them whatever they want to build. It's just that we need to know what they want, because what happens a lot of times is you want this, he wants that, he wants this, and she wants that, and nobody can get together, and that creates a lot of problems for us because we don't know what you want.
With a 3-tire rule, it almost seemed that maybe a little hotter compound to save the tire a little bit. I know it hurts your sails a little bit.
No, it doesn't, because you know what? Here you gotta understand.
Yeah.
I'm not about that. I'm
Yeah.
about having, instead of 14 midgets in the pits,
Yeah.
I want 30 midgets in the pits.
Yeah.
And if it means we gotta build a harder tire to make it work for you guys and we can get back there, I'm all for it.
No, for them to last, because basically, with 3-tire rule, you know, you got nothing left.
Now here's the thing
With a
too.
25 lap feature, you got no tires for next week.
Right. Yes, Steve.
Because I don't have anything in this game except the starter, if we're gonna go with a harder compound and people decide that, that's probably right, but we're gonna be careful of not going too much, because when you said I came up with a hard compound and race up here, we saw 9 cars, 12 cars, single file, and I saw features where, and Tim, you and I sat here, you know, and they said, Stephanie's making a move. She went from 9th to 8th, and that was the move of the day for 25 laps to see there. So you end up with a 1-groove race, and so we got to be careful. We're going to go a little bit harder. We're going to sneak up.
You're right.
Not say,
And that's things that you know, you can't just stab in the dark. Those are things that you have to say, okay, we're going to go test it 2 or 3 different tracks that you run the most at, and make sure that we can achieve this. Because you're right, there's going to be a couple things. I can tell you from experience, you will get a follow the lead deal, and I'll never forget Randy Sweet told me, parade start at 9 in the morning and not 9 o'clock at night. People come there to see racing. You know, and when you have the midgets that you have, the caliber you have the midgets up here, it's tough. I mean, those cars are fast. I mean, you got to really be on your game to pass. I mean, I watched Thompson, it's like, damn, I said, you guys are pretty brave. You know, I mean, that's fast. And the other thing that you'll find by going to a harder tire, it promotes soaking.
Okay, well, we had to stop there. Time limitations, but he'll pick up next week where he left off. And that'll be part 2 of this presentation. And I just want to remind everybody of what's coming up is the Modified Open Competition Series. It's 3 rounds over the summer. Round 1 is at Lee Speedway on Sunday, May 11th, Mother's Day, and moms get $5 off. They're going to have all kinds of different tours showing up to race against each other. The Valente mods, the Whelen NASCAR mods, North and Southern Tour, Race a Champion mods, the mods that race at Star Speedway, and any other ones that want to show up. Round 2 will be at Star Speedway in June. It's the SBM 125. And round 3 will be at Seekonk Speedway. So it's going to be a really interesting series. So I hope to see you at Lee Speedway on May 11th. And next week we'll have our continuation of the Hoosier presentation. So we'll see you all next week.